DEF CON. It's been expanded. So some of you guys have already seen some of this material. I'm going to go ahead and go through it all again. I'm probably going to breeze through some of it just because there's a lot more out on the internet about it now than there was when I first presented it, so you guys can find out more. What's that? Speak up. Yes, I can. All right. Who am I? My name is Tom Wilhelm. I think it's important for you guys to understand who I am and where my background is, mostly because that way you can understand where, why this project came about. I've got a bunch of letters after my name. Unfortunately, I'm in an environment where that's pretty much required to get past any sort of HR filters or anything like that. You shouldn't be impressed. Like I said, it's just to get in the door. So I got those. I also got a couple master's degree, one in computer science, one in management. I have a bachelor's degree in history as well, which is actually pretty fascinating. I encourage everybody to start expanding their ideas of what is an acceptable education in this environment, because a history degree has helped me out tremendously. I used to be in the Army. I was a Russian linguist. Okay. Unusual. I usually don't get that. Was a SIGINT analyst and a cryptanalyst. And I did that for about 8 years. So I have and I've been basically in information security for about 18 years now. Currently, I work for a Fortune 50 company. I do penetration testing and risk assessments. I get to do all the things that people aren't supposed to do, and I get paid to do it. I do internal and external penetration testing. During the risk assessments, there's usually a PenTest component, and basically they want to know, since their systems typically face the internet, they want to know exactly what you guys, or worse than you guys, can actually do. So we actually have to do the bad things, which is cool. That's kind of the Fortune 50, we're actually in the teens. I just wanted to, that was a good number to throw up there instead of actually saying a 14 whatever number. I'm also a PhD student. I'm also an adjunct professor. That's going to be important as we go through this, because you'll understand why this is so critical, this project. I'm also an author. I've been published in a few books and a magazine as well. Strangely enough, this is one of these, this project has been written in a couple of these books as well as the magazine. Very few people actually know about the dice.net PenTest live CDs. Who's actually, just out of curiosity, how many people have actually downloaded one of the discs and ran through it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, maybe 10. But it's been out for a year and a half, and like I said, it's been written up in books. And that's why I'm actually out here on the East Coast, is try to get a little bit more recognition, or not necessarily recognition, but at least get you guys familiar with what's out there. I mean, this is, I think, cool. It's obviously been written up, so it's not that bad. A little bit of history about myself. I told you that I was in information security for the last 18 years. Well, I've always been on the defensive side. Makes sense, military and things like that. Was a system administrator, security administrator, all that stuff. So it was always on the defensive side. Well, the company I was in currently went through a reorg not too long ago, a few years ago. And I got caught up in that reorg, and they moved me from doing basically exception policies for security, moved into the penetration testing group. Well, like I said, I understood what the bad guys did. And I understood, on a theoretical perspective of what the bad things could be on my system. Well, I've never actually really done those things. I knew about them, didn't do them. So I had to figure out what my job was, and I had to figure it out basically at a full run. Now, one of the things that you have to understand is that the company that I was in, they had pen testers, and they had been really hammering these systems, these internet-facing systems. So here I am, basically a newbie in a way. I understand the concepts, but I didn't know the actual techniques and the tools. And so here I am, I'm supposed to do this, and I don't really have the hands-on experience. So I go up and I try to actually do some hacking on some of our servers, and nowhere near, because the level of skill set was much higher than what I was starting out at. So I knew that I had to ramp up as quickly as possible, And so you hit the internet and you try to find out what are the suggestions on how to do this, and I had to do it quickly. So the first thing, there are some internet sites that allow you to do some SQL injections, and it's all web-based stuff. Cool. Need to know that. That's not a whole lot of what we ended up actually doing for real life. The scenarios, but that's typically it. There's nothing out there that teaches you, other than just reading, how to do an attack using Netcat or Scapy or any of that other stuff. You got to basically throw up your own lab. So next one, build a lab. Build a lab. They tell you, okay, get an OS that's compromised. You can compromise pretty easy. Oh yeah, okay, Windows 2000, good. Then you start learning to hack on that. All right, so you get up Metasploit, you spin that up, you click a couple buttons, you click another button, the next thing you know, you got root. That didn't teach me anything, nothing. So the next thing is that, the other alternatives is that you start hacking over the internet. There's certain things that are available out there, unfortunately, that they're not secure. Well, I like to keep my job, so I couldn't do that. So what I ended up having to do is I just had to go, read everything I can and actually bang my head as hard as I could against these systems so I could actually learn how to do this. It was extremely painful and extremely difficult. So we're going to talk about a little bit of why you actually need a PenTest lab. I just said that PenTest labs, it wasn't really a good experience because you throw up something, it's easy to compromise. The alternative is you throw up something that's difficult, a newer version of the of Red Hat or Red Hat or whatever you want to. Try banging your head. No, you got to be able to understand how to do reverse engineering and stuff like that in order to be successful. Because you're not, all the holes have already been patched. It's a new operating system, good luck. So you really need to have a lab because hacking on the internet doesn't work. And here's some of the reasons why. We've got two people up here. These aren't the best examples because they were a little bit malicious in their intent. However, one of the things that you want to notice down here is that it did not compromise any of the confidential or proprietary information. This last individual was mostly doing it for joyriding. Unfortunately, he got busted. It didn't matter what his motives are, what his intentions were. It could have been, pure as the virgin snow, but the problem was the law didn't care. He got busted, 12 months, a lot of money. So you really need to focus on a lab. So you're going to end up banging your head. That doesn't make sense. So, well, we're going to talk a little bit more. There's also some other problems as into why you need a lab. Even if you've got a buddy to set up a server on the internet, you've got problems with brute force attacks, aggressive scanning, there's denial of service attacks, there's all these other things that you got to deal with or you have to do in order to learn some of these techniques. And unfortunately, the intrusion detection systems will identify it. Your internet service provider will also notice these things. So it's not necessarily a good thing to do. Plus, you also have some time constraints. Your buddy might set up a server and you want to hack. Well, unfortunately, somebody else tells that buddy, or that buddy tells somebody else, and next thing you know, there's 20 people hitting it. Also, next thing you know, his server goes down, he's at work, you can't do it, you got to wait till he gets back. It's really crazy. Code of ethics, that's another reason why I need a lab. And like I said, I get paid well enough that I don't want to jeopardize that. So that's the disadvantages of the hacking over the internet and the advantages of having a lab. So let's talk about what are the disadvantages of a lab. It's expensive and expansive. There's electrical costs, there's equipment costs, there's limited rack space. My wife gets really ticked off every time I bring in a new shiny blinky box. And I mean, my bedroom right now is probably about 20 degrees warmer than the rest of the house. Living space becomes uncomfortable. So it is living with your wife. Diversity is up to you. You got to find the equipment that you want to hack in order, and then bring it into your lab and hook it up and get familiar with it and all that other stuff. It would be really convenient if you wanted to learn Oracle's or you wanted to learn the Slayer's hacks to just be able to touch that system rather than go out and buy it. That's one of the disadvantages of a lab. Here's the big one, and this is one of the reasons why I ended up doing these disks, is how do you make a real-world challenge? I talked about ramping up a Windows 2000 box. Let's just go through that. I throw on some patches, and I set up some weak services that I know are weak, but everything else is tight. Well, I already know what the vulnerabilities are, and I know how to exploit it. You can't create, it's a chicken and egg problem. How do you get something that's a challenge if you already know how it's set up? Can't. So I began to think. After a couple of years of banging my head and getting up to speed, I started reflecting on what I experienced, and I really didn't enjoy it. And so I was thinking, how can I do this in a way that people coming up behind me don't go through this headache? Well, it had some criteria. It needed to be easy. It needed to be challenging enough. It really had to simulate real-world situations. A lot of times, you know, like you do the web-based hacking, and you know, you go through the HTML page and you look for the password on the HTML page. That's very beginner stuff. Who does that? Nobody. So it can't be this fictitious. It has to be based on real-world experience. Now, at this point, I had already, you know, like I said, banged my head, and I was getting that real-world experience. I was learning what those vulnerabilities really were in the real world. So I could take those and apply this to these disks. It had to be portable, and it had to be nerdy enough to be cool. Right. Something nerdy would be live CDs, and they're cool. All right. Everybody here has dealt with a live CD. I mean, Backtrack, right? Right. Okay. Who has Backtrack on their system, loaded on their hard drive? Yeah. Okay. Who only runs it from the live CD? Really? I'm pretty impressed. So you don't mount up the hard drives or anything like that. So, okay, let's talk about speed. If you're doing like a Hydra attack, where basically you're doing a brute force over the net to try to get passwords, what's the I/O speed between your disk, yeah, it's questionable. You really want that speed. Unfortunately, what most people do is they take that disk, really cool idea, keeps it really secure, you can't hack the disk, and they put it on their hard drive. I do it. I do it because of that speed problem. I've done distros, you know, Ubuntu comes with the ability to run it as a live CD. I don't do that, I install it. So live CDs, my experience with live CDs was you take it, you burn it, you throw it on the disk, and you drop it to the drive. So live CDs were basically cool, but I haven't really seen a real good reason to use them. But then it clicked for me on this one. There's some advantages to using the live CD. First of all, there's cost advantage. I can have an entire server run up on a disk. I don't have to have, if I want to do multiple scenarios, I can just VM it on one system. I'm done. It's portable and compact. I got a disk, I can give it to you guys. Well, I got one disk, I can give it to one person. It's quick and easy to use. I screw up the server, I reboot it. That's it. I don't have to go through building it up and everything like that. There are some other, I'm going to inject right now, there are some other scenarios, some practice labs, basically. Like, anybody heard of the Hack Me series? Yeah, there's a few. The Hack Me series is basically, it's like 99% web-based attacks. Excuse me. But what you got to do is you got to take a server, you got to put .NET on there, you got to put their Windows SQL server on there, you got to do all these things, Microsoft proprietary. I screwed that up when I did that one time. I had to rebuild that. Everybody knows rebuilding a server is a pain. So one of the advantages of the live CD is I just reboot. That's it. Now, the other thing to point out here is they are real servers with real services. There's a little bit of confusion when people first get introduced to these live CDs, and the understanding is that they take what they already know, things like damn vulnerable Linux and things like that, and try to take these disks and put that in that mold. I'm going to explain why that's not the case, and you shouldn't think of that way, but I'll get that in a second. Okay, disadvantages of live CDs. There's always got to be a disadvantage. If you're actually learning or wanting to learn PenTest, these live CDs are great. If you're wanting to learn how to be a system administrator, this is a bad idea because I've set up the entire servers for you. There's a difference between modules and packages. the modules are basically put together and then put on the disk, and then the disk runs it. Normally what you do with the server, you want a package